Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today I have a speaker review. Amazon bookshelf speaker with passive speaker. Their words, not mine. Rated from 50 hertz to 20 kilohertz. We're going to dive straight into the meat here. I listened to these on the Amaya A07 with their base power supply. They claim 80 watts channel with that. I also listened to them on the Fozzy Audio TB10A TPA3116 mini power amplifier. It says it on the front. They have a base power supply. They claim 100 watts a channel, and the Pioneer VSX LX103 home AV receiver, which claims 80 watts a channel. I listened to them in a bedroom, and I also listened to them in a living room. I listened to them 8 inches from the wall. I listened to them 1.5 feet from the wall, and I pulled them out all the way to 3 feet from the wall. I used them for a few days and had a pretty poor initial impression, and I kind of thought it was over. I didn't think I was going to even go back. I just thought, whatever, screw it. I like to switch around 3 different sets of speakers right now in my for music listening. Home theater, I pretty much stick to one set, and that would be the Pioneer SPC 22s, which is their center channel speaker of the BS22LR. I have 2 of them, and I run them in my mains for movies because they are just delicious detail mids. Great for movies, crossed over to a sub at about 80 hertz. So I also switched to my BS22LRs, actually, obviously, and those are modified internal dampening. I also have a set of aftermarket tweeters I have to make up the crossover for, but the SPC 22s are not modded at all. And then an SSCS5 from the Sonys, which we all have. So those are kind of the things that I was hearing when I wasn't listening to these during my listening period with these. And I would switch between those and then come back to these. And again, I had poor impressions. Just wasn't impressed with anything about them. I threw Tom Misch at him. His vocals are not very good on this. It's acceptable clarity throughout, but the mids are scooped. The bass is actually not bad for his music. It's acceptable, especially for like a small room, but the mids are scooped bad, and it stands out. Adele, you can hear it in her voice as well, mostly in her live recordings, because her album recordings to me tend to sound a little bit shallow. And then I threw on FKJ. He has a video on YouTube called Just Piano, and I kind of was doing some things, playing around with some things in the living room, cleaning and stuff, and I let go of the critical listening, and I enjoyed it. So there's a side note there. I live in Minnesota, so I'm obviously a bit of an Atmosphere fan at times. Get Fly, threw that on. These speakers kind of nail the bass on that. They do a great job, especially for all things considered. But it does sound like Slug. The rapper is sick. He's got the Vidco Megatron Supertron variant, and he doesn't sound good. So I threw on the Forgot About Dre acoustic cover, also on YouTube. Search it. Same, and it's hard to hear in that recording because it's a very poor recording, but still a little bit of scooping there. Just some side notes. So then I would switch back to these and had, again, poor impressions, and then would switch to my mains. And then I let these sit for a couple of weeks, and then I came back to them just today for a listening session before I threw a review down on it. And it was a little bit better. I think there's definitely a break-in, especially at this price point. There's definitely a break-in going on here. So give these speakers a little bit of time before you completely make up your decision on them. But unfortunately, some things just did not get better. So starting off with a little build quality notes here. The MDF on this is actually not bad. I'm kind of convinced that these are probably made right alongside speakers that are much more expensive, 2-3 times as much money. They're probably made in the same Chinese factory as some of them. I know that obviously they look very similar to a lot of other speakers. But the MDF is actually not bad. It's pretty decent MDF. The port is very nice. It's flush and it's nice. It's also very long. It goes almost all the way to the tweeter. And they're not ugly. I mean, sure, they're kind of ugly, but for a speaker, they're not entirely ugly. So when I threw them on, I noticed that the top end was very sharp. And again, so give these things a break and you'll probably hear the same thing. The top end will be sharp. The bass is extraordinarily inaccurate and extraordinarily boosted with a very fast roll off. Boosted around 150 hertz, probably rolled off to about 90. And absolutely no mid-range. It did female vocals poorly and did male vocals extraordinarily poorly. No sound staging. Very hard to place any instruments. Yeah, that's my initial impression. So, and also a side note that I have here is that the terminals actually hardly accept a 14 gauge. So don't buy these if you're running like, thicker wire. Whatever. Brings me to a good point though here between all of that, and that is who is their target audience here? Because with the wood on the side, I feel like they would only look good in a place that they would never live. So the type of home that these would blend in would be too nice of a home probably for them to live in. So the places they would live in then, they would look kind of out of place. So that's kind of an interesting note. They really didn't have a target audience, I believe, when they made these, because they're really, though, I concluded they're really made for people who don't know where they're going with their system, or care. So let's go further into it here. After about a month, I had my final listening impression here just today, and the soundstage was slightly better. I noticed that at least it was slightly existing. And the top end was definitely not as annoying as I remember from my initials. So that's probably break-in going on there. The details are present, but not always accurate. Mostly just missing, rather than exaggerated in any way. Mid-range was still very empty. It must have an extremely uneven response, because there are times where it almost sounds like the bass is boosted, and then there are times where the bass completely falls off, flat on its face, and it's all over the board. Some of the detail is done nicely in music, while other times, even in the mid-highs, you will be missing something that you enjoyed looking forward to in your song. Yeah, so let's get into the final thoughts on this, because there's not a lot here to discuss. I purchased these for, I think, $55. They're priced normally at $90. At around $50, if you're not an audiophile, you need something with this style, then fine. You could probably do worse at around $50. At $90, if you want something that hangs with the other speakers in that price range, you probably want to go from a different speaker that's made from a more well-established speaker brand. You will probably be happier. But even at 90, if you just really need something that looks like this, and you're not a critical listener, you could probably enjoy having these after the break-in period. But overall, these were kind of disappointing, especially from such a large company with such massive buying power. That's what intrigued me about these. I thought, man, they're probably able to do a lot more than others at certain price ranges, especially obviously the low end. But I just didn't get that impression at all, like they used their buying power for any sort of gain over any other competition. They clearly weren't going for, the best affordable bookshelf speaker, because I kind of, it'd be hard to believe they couldn't pull that off if they really wanted to. But if they listen to people's feedback, and if they can really fix that mid-range uneven response, and and upper mid range uneven response, this could be a very potentially competent speaker, especially for small rooms or as just surround speakers. Then that's really what it comes down to. I mean, if you were a beginner or intermediate DIYer and you wanted to buy these for $50 so that you could salvage the box, the port, the terminals, the crossover, the wiring, you'd have a head start on a custom set of speakers. I don't know what you're gonna do, but there's a lot of parts here, and not all useless for $50. So something to be said there. If you like this kind of thing, do the thing. If you don't, man, get in that comment section and let the world know how you feel. Go get them, all right? Don't hold back. Don't be scared. We want to hear it. So, thank you again, ladies and gentlemen.